USA deciding to rejoin United Nations Economic, Scientific and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO. Okay. So the first question is, why would USA rejoin this UNESCO? The reason is that in 2019, United States had exited from this organization under the decision of Donald Trump, who was propagating something called America First policies. Now, it was not just UNESCO from which Trump pulled out United States. He also pulled out United States from Trans-Pacific Partnership, a trade agreement which United States concluded with other 11 countries of world such as Japan. So it was not just the UNESCO which was the target. He, under the America First policy, was withdrawing United States from several other arrangements, multilateral arrangements as well. Now, but in particular, what was the reason cited by the United States? That is important. See, we have to understand that this controversy is basically not new. It is a decade-long dispute which actually started in 2011 when UNESCO admitted Palestine in the organization as the member state. Now, if we see Palestine, it is not the member of United Nations. It is not recognized by the UN as a sovereign independent state. It has the observer status. And as a result of the observer status, the Palestine cannot vote in the United Nations General Assembly. Okay, so they are not allowed to vote. Now, despite this fact, UNESCO had in 2011 admitted Palestine into the UNESCO. Okay, so this was cited as a issue which United States and Israel said having anti-Israel bias into the policies of UNESCO. Okay, so now USA has a law. What is this law? USA says, the law says that any UN organization which overtly or explicitly support the independence or nationhood aspirations of the Palestine, US is bound to not provide funding to it. Therefore, in 2011, the then President Barack Obama suspended the funding that United States was obliged to provide to UNESCO. So, in 2011, the funding was suspended. Okay, so the chain of events that happened was not in isolation. It was building earlier also. Okay, so the United States has announced its plan to join UNESCO after a decade-long dispute sparked by inclusion of Palestine as a member state. Now, since as I told you that United States suspended the funding of the UNESCO, so the return of US along with the payment of over 100 million in back dues. So since 2011, United States had accumulated the $600 million of dues that it owes to the UNESCO. Okay. It is a significant financial boost for UNESCO's initiative. So now this funding will come with the rejoining of United States. Okay. Before leaving, USA contributed 22% of agency's overall funding when it left. Okay. Now, after it left, this vacuum was basically filled by China. And China became the largest contributor of funding to the UNESCO. Now, when China dominated or filled the vacuum provided by the leaving of US from the organization, China utilized these organizations in terms of norm setting. Norm setting, for example, artificial intelligence and technology education. Since UNESCO is an important organization for providing scientific cooperation between the nations, it influenced the rule making or rule adoption by the UN itself for the scientific or the regulation of the scientific domain such as artificial intelligence. Now when the China is going to control or dominate this organization, so the dominance of China will again be reflected in the norm setting in term for the artificial intelligence. Now artificial intelligence is a technology which is different from earlier revolution or industrial revolution. Now what happened, earlier technological developments in which United States had huge edge because they had large number of patents over them. But this AI is different. Now this AI can be improved with the data. And China, having a huge population, has a control over a data set of huge number of people. It not only has the control over the important component of that goes into the development of the artificial intelligence, it also controls the big data, right? Chinese companies are strategically investing in India. For example, in various payment instruments, Chinese company is investing, which are operating in India. They pick up the small startups in which they invest because they acquire the stakes in those startups, and then those startups starts collecting data from the people, and then the Chinese company transporting the data to the centers in the Beijing. Okay, then those data are fed into the artificial intelligence systems to train them, to improve them, and to work better. All right, so this is how this new technology is the one technology which does not ensure dominance of any particular country solely on the basis of intellectual property right. Here the dominance will come from the data, and China has huge control over the data. So US is worried that its absence will allow China to frame rules and norms for regulation of the artificial intelligence in future in the world. So China will help frame the rules in a manner that will suit the Chinese interest more than the United States. Therefore, United States of America wants to rejoin. Now, see, UNESCO is an organization which was created after the World War II in 1945. So we have to understand an important point here. If we see the constitution of UNESCO, it says war happens in the mind of the men and women. Therefore, defenses against the war must also be built within or inside the mind. Okay, so it recognizes that we have to establish a peaceful society. Therefore, we need to establish cultural, scientific and educational communication between the communities and between the nations, so that instead of hatred that world saw when the Germany went for anti-racist and anti-Semitist outburst, which resulted in perishing of millions of people, so they want that countries should appreciate each other's culture. And to appreciate each other's culture, it is very important to share knowledge, right? To appreciate others' side, others' cultures. Okay. Therefore, UNESCO tries to preserve the cultures by providing the sites as World Heritage status. Okay. So once a site, whether natural or whether cultural, is recognized by the World Health by the UNESCO, the status is given as World Heritage Site, and this is then protected under it. Okay. So it was an organization which was created for building peace, because it was realized that political instruments alone will not be sufficient to build peace. Therefore, we have to curb the hatred of one community against the other. The inter-community dialogue, the international dialogues, etc. are very, very important, and for that cultural exchanges, etc. are also a important factor. So this was how that UNESCO started to work in these areas. Okay. Now what happened? That despite the idea is to establish peace through these scientific, cultural and educational means, politics will still enter the functioning of UNESCO. And this has happened, as I gave you some examples. In 1984 also USA exited the organization. At that time, USA cited the reason that because of the Soviet influence is growing in UNESCO, and UNESCO is working in the interest of the Soviets and not in the interest of the world as a whole, USA had exited the UNESCO under the leadership of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was the president then. In 2003, under the leadership of George W. Bush, USA rejoined the organization once again. Now, under the leadership of Trump, it again exited, and now under the leadership of President Joe Biden, it is rejoining. Okay, so all these are political factors which still are play. But one of the important political factor that I want to discuss is this. So as I had already discussed, like country rejoined organization in 2003 under the leadership of this, and in 1984 in the Cold War era, it has already exited it. Okay, now you have to understand one important thing, how the politics is entering into functioning of UNESCO. So Chinese influence, as I said, has grown in the organization. Now what China is doing, China is trying to create legitimacy for its rule over areas not dominated by majority Han community. Majority Han community. Now Han is the ethnic community which controls, which has 90% of the population in China. And whereas the regions like Tibet and Xinjiang, where other ethnic communities, for example, Uyghurs in Xinjiang are more than 40% of the total population. What happens is that they do not recognize the Chinese rule as the legitimate, right? World countries also might empathize with them. So what China wants to do, it wants to create legitimacy, and for this it is using this organization. How it is using this organization? China applies for World Heritage sites for certain important geographical and cultural sites in those areas which are not Han populated or Han dominated. Okay, for example, let's take the example of this Jigmai mountain in southwest China. Now this has been given UNESCO World Heritage Site status. Okay. Now this is important because it is known for an important tea which can be called pu'er. This is a tea which is known for digestive properties. Okay. So it's a very demanding tea. Now once this Jigmai mountain has got the status of World Heritage Site, then it will cause two things. Number one, the tea grown here will be exported, so it increases the demand for this tea. Okay, so it enhances the trade. Okay, trade competitiveness of China, because now the world countries will appreciate, and because of the popularity it gets, it will be demanded by the international market more. Okay, so this is going to increase the trade. Second thing it will do, that it will also help attract China tourists to these places. So what China is doing, it will earn lot of foreign exchange as well. Okay, lot of foreign exchange also Chinese are going to earn because of this World Heritage status. But this is only the economic side of it. We have to see the political side of it. As I told you, that it wants to enhance the legitimacy of its rule over these minority dominated areas. So how they are doing? They are trying to recreate history. They are trying to rewrite history. So what they are doing? Recently they had proposed that Tian Shan mountain be given World Heritage status. Okay. So now this Tian Shan mountain lies in Xinjiang. And Xinjiang is a region which was never part of China. for large part of history. Okay, it was only that the king dynasty in the 18th century, that king dynasty started to control it. And this is in recognition of this fact, this dynasty named the region as Xinjiang. Xinjiang means new territory. Xinjiang means new territory. Okay, so that's why they named this place as such, because it was not historically ruled by it. But what China is claiming in this document that it is submitting to the UNESCO, that it has always been part of Chinese diverse culture and it has always been inherited by the people of Chinese origin or the Chinese people. So they are saying since ancient times, people of all Chinese nationalities have lived on these fertile lands. Okay, so this is the document that they are submitting here. So what they are doing essentially, once it gets the World Heritage Site status, it will cement the Chinese control in the eyes of the world further over this region. Okay, so now China is using UNESCO to further its geopolitical interest. So it is not just trade, it is not just tourism that China is seeing these things. It is also the geopolitical lens through which China is doing. In last issue, I had already discussed with you renaming of Arunachal Pradesh as a important significant development that China is doing. Certain places in the Arunachal Pradesh, China had renamed in Chinese. Okay, so why they are doing? They are trying to legitimize their claim over the territory which is not belonging to them by inventing the name. So is the Chinese inventing the history, and then this history they are taking to the UNESCO, and if they get the status of World Heritage Site, this is recognized as internationally by the world community. So it further strengthens the Chinese claim over these territories. Okay, so this is the in totality the essence of UNESCO, use of UNESCO by the China as a political and geopolitical instrument. Now, this is what USA is fearing. It does not want China to allow UNESCO to become a political tool for the Chinese. Okay, so this is what we are discussing here. One of the main reasons was the concern over organizations perceive anti-Israel bias, as I had already discussed. The US criticized UNESCO for its handling of Israel-Palestinian conflict and recognition of Palestine as a member state. That happened in the year of 2011. Okay, another factor was financial concerns. United States had been contributing significant portion of UNESCO's budget. Okay, despite that, United States under the America First policy of the Trump said that they are not getting enough outcome or the benefits out of the contribution. Okay, so US government had accused of fiscal mismanagement and lack of accountability issues within the organization. The decision to withdraw was influenced by broader skepticism towards the multilateral institutions and a desire to reassess and prioritize US engagement and funding. As I told, under America First, it was not the only multilateral platform from which the US withdrew. It also withdrew from Paris Agreement and other kind of multilateral things. Okay, so something about United Nations Educational and Scientific and Cultural Organization. Okay, so it is a specialized UN agency. So first thing is this. It entered into force in 1946. Okay, immediately after the World War II. Okay, the agency's permanent headquarters is in Paris, France. The parent organization was United Nations Economic and Social Council. This was the parent organization out of which it emerged. Primary goal, it is to contribute to peace and security. As I had already told you, that the charter itself or the UNESCO constitution itself says that war begins at the mind of the men and women. Therefore, the defenses against the war has to be built within the mind itself. Therefore, it is talking about the cultural etc. thing. So UNESCO believes that these areas are crucial for building more just, peaceful and inclusive world order. Okay, so areas that it prioritizes is education, promotes quality education for all. So basically it is inclusive education that it is promoting. Natural sciences, so by providing World Heritage Sites tags to the natural sites, it is trying to help conserve the natural features and natural climate. So it has something called Man and Biosphere program, okay, under which a network of biosphere reserves have been identified in various countries. So network of biosphere reserves, they have identifying inside the various countries. So biosphere reserves are there not just for the conservation, they are also there for the learning about how to improve the science of environment, about how to know the problems that are causing to the biodiversity loss, and how to preserve the biodiversity. That means the scientific exploration and the scientific knowledge also is has to be enhanced by this biosphere reserves. Okay, so it also fosters cultural diversity and intercultural dialogue. So it talks about tangible and intangible heritage. So tangible heritage status can be given to physical things like Ajanta and Ellora caves. Okay, intangible heritage can be given to certain dance forms, etc. Okay. Now UNESCO designates and maintains a list of World Heritage Sites. Now World Heritage Sites can both be natural. Okay, so natural World Heritage Sites can be biosphere reserves, Sundarbans, etc. These are the natural World Heritage Sites. Okay. So key reports published by UNESCO. Now prelims examination, it's very important. Lot of UN agencies, World Bank, etc. reports have been asked directly by the UPSC in the prelims exam. So you have to remember some important reports that are issued by the UNESCO for the sake of prelims examination. Like Global Education Monitoring Report, United Nations World Water Development Report, the World Trends in Freedom of Expression and Media Development, and the Global Ocean Science Report. These are the 4 important prominent reports issued by this organization.